My attitude is that if a leader has to fire an employee, it's the leader's failure, not the employee's failure. Nobody gets out of bed in the morning and says, I'm going to go into work today and see how many things I can screw up.
On this episode of Executive Edge, Greg is joined by Edward Rensi, a businessman and former president and CEO of McDonald's USA.
I found out that the energy in every enterprise, and I'll tell you the one common factor of success in every business is people, how you train them, how you manage them, and how you lead them.
Through personal stories, tough lessons, and transformational decisions, Ed breaks down what great leadership really means. People, standards, accountability, and heart.
Let's imagine you have a new neighbor. They move in and say, hey, I just got promoted to CEO. It's my first time as a CEO. What's one lesson you would give that person, Ed?
Keep your mouth shut, open up your ears, and talk to your employees because they know every problem you got and they know what the solution is if somebody will just listen to them.
Welcome to the latest episode of Tenzing's Executive Edge podcast. Our guest today is a legend in the restaurant industry, Mr. Ed Rensi. Ed is the retired president and CEO of McDonald's USA, where he spent nearly his entire professional career. He started as a grill cook in Columbus, Ohio in 1966 and went on to hold nearly every position in the restaurant and field offices before being named president in 1984 and CEO in 1991. In his tenure at McDonald's, Ed spearheaded the enhancement of the breakfast menu and drive-through concept, as well as the development of Chicken McNuggets, McRib sandwich, extra value meal, and very importantly, the Ronald McDonald House, a great charitable endeavor. As president, McDonald's sales and numbers of U.S. restaurant roughly doubled under Ed's leadership. This is a growth guy we're talking to today. One of Ed's greatest passions is auto racing, and after retiring from McDonald's, Ed was the owner, chairman, and CEO of Team Rensi Motorsports, a NASCAR racing team for almost 14 years. So Ed, thank you for joining me today to discuss your career and thoughts on leadership. It's great to have you with us.
Good to be here. I think this is an exciting opportunity. Anytime I can provide an example of how to live your life in corporate America or on the street, I want to do it. I've been gifted by having great leaders and great mentors. And if I can repay that forward, I want to do it.
I want to get started way back when you grew up not too far from where I am today, out near Steubenville, Ohio, as I understand it. And you went to down to Columbus to go to school at Ohio State. But then something happened there at Ohio State. I think you didn't like school much. You'd rather be working, right?
Actually, there were some parts of school I enjoyed a lot. Like I liked taking science classes like geology and things like that. I hated all the other nonsense I had to do, like English and writing. I still can't spell or write. I'm glad I can talk. But it just wasn't for me. I'm just not an academic kind of guy. I like to learn, but I don't like sitting in a room and listening and taking notes and passing tests. And I made up my mind taking a geology course one time. I was going to get 100% on every question I was asked in a test, whatever it was. So I sat down and I memorized that damn book. And I went to that professor who wrote the book and he gave the test. I never missed a question on any test. The very last test, the final, he marked one question wrong, which was, in my opinion, not right. And I went and got my book and looked and I was right. I took it in and he said, Ed, he said, I've never had anybody do this before and you're not going to be the first. You're not going to be the first. He said, nobody is.
Nice. But you picked up a job while you were there at school, right? At McDonald's.
Yeah, my college counselor told me if I didn't start behaving, and it happened to be my high school physics teacher who went to Ohio State as a professor. And he was my counselor, and I didn't know he was my counselor until I walked in the room. I don't know if he picked me or I picked him or how it happened. His name was Dr. Leonard Costantini. He lived next door to my family when I grew up in Hopedale, Ohio. And he said, Ed, if you don't leave school, you're going to flunk out, and your parents can't handle that. They're spending too much money, so why don't you quit? I said, okay. So I walked out of that college office at Arps Hall and said, what the hell am I going to do now? And I walked across the street, and as I was going across North High Street, there was this goofy-looking red and white tile building with these arches on top, and had a sign in the window, help wanted. I said, well, hell, I'm good help. I'm going to go in there and get a job. So I walked straight across High Street, went in there, and interviewed with a guy by the name of Ed Brown. He said, "Hey, kid, we'll hire you." He said, "How much money you want?" And I said, "I got at least to have 50 cents an hour, or at least that much." And I didn't even know what the minimum wage was back then. He said, "Well, I'll pay you 85 cents an hour." And I said, "Damn, that's good. I'm ready to go." Found out later that was the Ohio minimum wage at the time. So I went to work for him, and they put me in the basement with the sacks of potatoes all around me, and I cut brownies and made strawberry shortcake. Now, I thought this is a superb job because I could eat a brownie here and there, have some strawberry shortcake. How could you go wrong and get paid to do it? And so I just worked hard and worked hard and worked hard. And they said, "You know, you're doing a pretty good job. We'd like you to go into management." And I said, "Well, how much do I get paid?" They said $1 an hour. I thought, damn, I'm going to get a raise. I said, "Make it $1.25 and I'll do it." And they said, "Okay." So after 3 months, I started working as a manager trainee, making $1.25 an hour. I never left. I just kept working and working. And then one day I got promoted to manager and I moved here. I lived in Mansfield, Ohio, Marion, Ohio. I lived in Washington, D.C., Bethesda, Maryland. I lived all over the East Coast, back to Pennsylvania, then to New York, up Jamestown, New York, then back to Chicago. And my first house was a mobile home. And I'm the only guy in the world that ever had a mobile home I had to change the tires on because I moved around the country so much. The tires were bald from towing it. And then I got enough money together when I moved to Manassas, Virginia to work in Washington, D.C. I finally bought a house. Now, this is an interesting thing. I had no money to buy a house. I don't think I was making $12,000 a year. And Ray Kroc came to town. He wanted to visit all the company stores. So we had just bought all the stores that GG had, which is about 40 restaurants, and they became company stores. I had no idea where they were because I'd always worked on the franchise side. I knew where they were. So there's one in Manassas, Virginia. I happen to know where it was at. And I said, "Ray, I'll take you to Manassas, Virginia, where the big battle of, Gettysburg and the Civil War." So I drove over to that store and didn't have any seats in it. Just had 2 picnic tables out front. So he always loved cheeseburgers. So I got him a cheeseburger and I got him a chocolate milkshake and a big order of French fries. And we're sitting out there eating. He stands up. He said, "I got to go talk to the manager." I thought, what the hell? Because Ray was a tough dude. He demanded excellence. He walks up to the store manager. He says, "Son, I want you to give the food away today. Everybody comes in here and give them free food." The manager looks at me and he says, "What should I do?" I said, "He owns the company. I suggest you give away free food." I said, "Ray, why are you doing it?" He said, "This food's so terrible, we shouldn't charge for it."
Oh.
I didn't know what to do. I was flabbergasted. So I said, "Look, just do what he says. Work on your quality. I'll be back after I take Mr. Kroc back to his airplane." So I looked at 3 or 4 more stores, took him back to Dulles Airport, and he took off in his Aero Commander, and I went back to that restaurant. I said, "Okay, pick yourself up off the floor, kid. I want you to work on quality. Ray is all about quality, service, and cleanliness, and do everything you can to be as perfect as you can. And if your supervisor gets on you," because I was not in charge of company stores. I was in charge of all the franchise stores.
Right.
Well, he ended up becoming a vice president of McDonald's eventually. And he was all about quality. And that's when I learned a lesson from Ray. You're either going to have standards or you're not. And it's hard to do because sometimes you just get overwhelmed with life and you just can't do it. But Ray taught me some very, very valuable lessons. He was an entrepreneur, but he was also a very kind man, a very generous man. Oh, I didn't tell the story. He asked me if I owned a house. I said, "No, Ray, I can't afford to buy a house. My salary is only $10,000 a year." He said, "Ed, you need to buy a house." He says, "It's the most important security you'll ever have in your life. So if you do lose your job, you'll at least have equity in a house that you can trade so you can buy groceries." I said, "Okay." This was midsummer. In October on his birthday, he sent me shares of stock, his own personal stock, and said, "Ed, use these to buy your house."
Huh.
Can you imagine
Very
that?
nice.
So I put down a $15,000 deposit on a $40,000 house because of Ray Kroc's birthday. And boy, you don't think that didn't cement me to love that man forever? I'm telling you. He was a generous, kind, wonderful guy.
Well, he certainly must have seen something in you, and coming off of starting as on the grill, I guess is how you like to say it, right? When did you realize?
I was making strawberry shortcake. Nobody could believe McDonald's sold strawberry shortcake.
But then you made your way out of the basement up to the grill, I think. But not too many grill men become the CEO. I'd like to know when you realized. At what point did you realize you had a unique leadership style that was going to propel you forward with a company like McDonald's?
Never ever thought I did.
Really?
I never thought that I had anything that would allow me to ever do what I ended up doing. I just tried to do the best I could in every job I had, learning everything I could learn, and make sure I developed people to their maximum potential. I never thought 1 minute about ever being president of anything. I just wanted to do a good job I was in. And fortunately, I hit the power curve because McDonald's was growing dramatically and we needed people. So 50% of it was luck, 50% of it was default, and 50% was I was willing to do about anything to keep my job because I was afraid.
When you look back on those days, those early days, and I kind of do this too, sometimes that simplicity of the early work you did, it's really something to look back on that and think about where you were and where you ended up. What did you take away from that time out at the restaurants, working the griddle, working with customers, focusing on quality? What did you take from there up into the C-suite?
Every business, and I don't care what business it is very, very dependent upon engaged employees, people who really care about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And the more support you give them, the more training you give them, the more guidance you give them, the more they're going to love the company they work for. And I found out that the energy in every enterprise, and I was on the board of directors of a lot of other companies after McDonald's and during McDonald's. And I'll tell you, the one common factor of success in every business is people, how you train them, how you manage them, and how you lead them. You could sell just about anything to anybody if you got the right staff with the right focus, and they have a chance to grab the brass ring when you get the merry-go-round going the right way. And so people, and when in doubt, people. Training, education, support. Never give up on anybody, because I've never met one person in my life to get out of bed in the morning and say, damn, I can't wait to go to work today and screw things up and hate people. Nobody does that. If you got a job, everybody wants to do well. And the only reason why any employees fail is because of bosses, poor leadership, lack of leadership, or indifference to the employee. It's blame the boss if there's a problem. Don't blame the employees, because they can only do what you lead them to do.
Nice. So let's talk about that in terms of people, culture, and accountability. So, McDonald's is probably the case study in having structure, right? And a consistent way of doing things, high quality way of doing things. But it also is known for empowering leaders and the people that were running the franchises and the company-owned stores. How did you balance the consistency you were trying to promote so that the McDonald's experience was the same whether I went to Chicago or Los Angeles or Tokyo, with letting people lead locally and do what was right for their store and their market? How did you balance that?
Well, I have a point of view that says McDonald's never ever had any more restaurants than one. I only ran one restaurant 30,000 times. And the consistency and the predictability and the devotion to standards, which was Ray Kroc's mantra. Ray Kroc was all about standards and people. But, Ray only had one child. And everybody at McDonald's was his child, his son, his daughter. The franchisees loved him because he treated them all with respect and dignity. And Fred Turner he was Ray's protege. He was, I think, his second employee after June Martino. And Fred was a sergeant in the Army at one point, brilliant guy. He had leadership instincts that you wouldn't believe. And boy, he was a tough taskmaster. The only thing Fred Turner would ever accept was perfection. Everything else, perfection was defined by the product that people wanted to buy and the way they wanted to buy it. I was fortunate to work for Ray and Fred directly. I also had another mentor, Ed Schmidt. And Ed Schmidt was a sergeant in World War II. His family owned restaurants, a restaurant, I think, in Chicago. His sons both became franchisees. And Ed Schmidt worked with me in Ohio. He was a regional manager. I can't remember the exact title. But he was a disciplined leader. Fred was a standards guy. Everything by the book and there's no deviation. Schmidt allowed for the human condition. They were a beautiful balance between yin and yang. Those two guys were special. And then they recruited people like them. Bernie Hall in construction, who was a regional vice president. He was a very kind, sweet guy. Brett Cameron, who was a Marine Corps pilot in Korea, I believe. And he was a real estate construction guy. And he came to Philadelphia to help me build restaurants and taught me about the discipline. He was not a contractor. He wasn't a carpenter. He was a builder of men because of his leadership skills. So everything you look at, the details were enhanced and amplified by the personality of the leader. And good wasn't good enough. Great was barely tolerable. And so we did inspections on restaurants. We did employee inspections. We checked uniforms, fingernails. Ray Kroc bought every manager in McDonald's a little pocket thing that had a fingernail file in it, a small mirror. And there was one other thing in there. I can't remember what it was. And he said, make sure you groom yourself well before you come to work. That was the kind of mentality he had. He gave us every year on Father's Day and Mother's Day, he sent gifts to his employees. He sent me a popcorn maker one time, and there was a note in there that said, Ed, make some popcorn for your family, sit down and watch television and enjoy your life and enjoy your family. Things like that. It was always something. Kroc, Turner, and my other boss, Mike Quinlan, who was a wonderful guy too, he just passed away recently. They bought 7 or 8 condominiums and resorts around the United States. And if you were a good store manager, a good assistant manager, they would reward you by paying all expenses and you could go to one of those resorts with your family. And, when you have people that lead you, that care about you at the bottom of the pile and up to the top of the pile, that inspires you to do better than they did. And it is about leadership. At the end of the day, it's always about leadership. How do you lead people? How do you tell people? How do you educate people? And how do you make sure that when they have a problem, you pick them up and not beat them down?
That's a great, there's a great anecdotes about the personal touch that was made on people. I can tell you, I once took my family to a resort in Florida in Bonita Springs. And, when we got there, I checked in and they said, oh, here's an envelope for you, Mr. Anderson. And there was a very nice resort credit waiting for me that I was not expecting. And it was from my boss because he knew where I was going to go on vacation with my family. He knew I had 4 kids in tow. And it was such a great experience to open that envelope and then to go back to the room and say, look at this to my wife, So those what might sound like a small touch mean a lot to people. And I think that's a great motivator.
Well, I used to say to my people, work hard at finding the golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
Not the ones that limit people, but ones that elevate people. And so what's the golden handcuff that's going to keep them attached to you?
I wanted to talk about what's the most important thing executives get wrong when they're motivating large teams. So you clearly, when you were the CEO of McDonald's USA, you must have had a massive team underneath you. And what do you see people doing wrong? Because I think it's important sometimes to know what to do right, but also what to avoid, right? We learn both things as we rise up through the ranks. What do you think executives get wrong about motivating very large teams?
Well, every corporation is different because the structures are all different. So every company is going to be different in how they approach things. One of the things that we did at McDonald's, which I was very proud of, is we told every one of our department heads from the very grassroots region, we had, I think, 30 regions at one time. scattered all over the United States. And the philosophy was every regional manager is in charge of their patch. They know their area better than anybody. They know the people that live there, the culture, the environment. So we would say to them, we want you to put together your plan for the coming year. And I had to do it when I was a regional manager or district manager, then a regional manager, then a regional vice president. And so did all of our other regional managers, district managers, et cetera. We had to build a plan. We started on the 1st of October. We had those plans reviewed in December. And we went into Chicago or Oak Brook, Illinois. And all of us, all the regional managers, many of the department heads, district managers, sat in one room and we listened to each other present our plans. And every executive in that room that was a field executive had an obligation to create a wish list. It could be one thing or it could be 1,000 things, but you had to have a wish list and you had to talk about why you put that wish list together and what you wanted to accomplish with that wish list. We had a franchise or a regional manager, Tom Fuster in Columbus, Ohio, that came in and he wanted to start a chain of hotels or motels for families based on the McDonald's model of taking care of people, putting the right amenities in the room, make it affordable, make it clean, neat, and let managers of those hotels become owners of the company that supported that. In other words, take the McDonald's model and move it into hotels. Well, we spent probably a day debating whether or not that's a business that McDonald's ought to get into. And, and I had some ideas about entertainment and what we should do with entertainment, family entertainment. And I actually got to end up building one of these companies. It was called Leaps and Bounds, Play with Purpose. We built 55 of them. They were indoor play places that had ball crawls and elevated spaces. And at the end, we had a parents' viewing room with big screen TVs in there. And it was all glass and it was 4 feet up. They could sit in there on backyard garden chairs, chase lounges and comfortable furniture. They could put a football game on the TV, watch the football game, but they could watch their kids out there in that playground. Created independence. So that was an idea that I got to do from my wish list. Others had, so we experimented all the time. Ray Kroc had a wish list. He wanted to create a pie shop. So they called Jane Dobbins Pie Shops. I think we had 10 or 15 of them. So McDonald's was constantly pushing the envelope to see what we could do, how much better we could get, where could we take this business model. And if it worked, okay. If it didn't work, we got rid of it, moved on to something else. But we were allowed to express our creativity outside of McDonald's instead of screwing around with the business model on the inside. Now, we also had the chance to talk about product improvements, uniform improvements. So during those budget future-looking meetings, and it took the whole month of December, when we walked out of that room, we knew that was our budget. You brought it in here. We vetted it. All you got to do now is deliver your budget. Sales, people, profit. End of discussion. Deliver it. You're a hero. Don't deliver it. We want to know why. And if you see you're running short, you better come to us and ask for resources, ask for what you need, ask for help. Because it's your job. It's your responsibility. You make it happen. So the whole culture of being willing to experiment, try new things, push the envelope, it caused us to be able to express ourselves, but yet stay focused on the core business in an intense way. And boy, I'll tell you what, we were intense on that McDonald's model.
Yeah, what I hear coming through there, Ed, is you gave people freedom and you allowed them to express their creativity and maybe do things for their local market that they knew because they know that best. However, you had a high amount of accountability to say, okay, now you have to leave this room and go hit that plan. Sales.
You were allowed to exceed the plan, but you were never allowed to miss the plan.
Right. You could always beat it. Nobody complained about that, right?
It's called rewards and consequences.
Yeah. But it sounds like it was, it wasn't, because you can look at a place like that and say it must be very militant, right? Because it's so consistent from store to store what you experience. But it's great to know that there was this ability to express creativity.
I have great admiration for the Marine Corps. because a lot of the people that I worked with were former Marines and a bunch of Army guys too. But I like the Marine Corps' adage, whatever we're going to do, we're going to do it better than anybody. And we don't know what we're going to be doing in the future, but we're going to be doing it better than anybody. And we're not sure what we're going to sell in the future, but we're going to sell more of it than anybody. No matter what it was, we were going to do more than anybody anywhere ever did it before. It was a philosophical thing, but it motivated it. I never saw anybody get fired because they missed the plan. The only question was, did you call for help? Did you ask for help? What does it cause this? Explain it. And we had quarterly reviews. We reviewed our plans quarterly. And if somebody's having trouble, we threw resources at them. What's going on? How's this happening? And I can remember periods when we had wage and price controls and things like that. And we had mad cow disease. It was a horrible situation. We couldn't get cattle. Nobody was slaughtering. And we created the Lionel Root Agency. And we started buying. Lionel Root was our purchasing manager. He teamed up with Herb Lotman, who was one of our biggest meat suppliers. And we went around the United States on our company jet. They did. They bought cattle at auction.
Yeah.
That we vetted. We took those cattle to our own slaughterhouses that we controlled and managed. They weren't McDonald's owned, but we contracted with them to slaughter. We did lab testing on all the meat. We checked for mad cow disease. We did all that stuff. And we had people say, how in the world did you have hamburger and nobody else could? It's because we went right to the farmer. And we said, if you got good cattle, we want them and we'll buy them all. We're not going to discuss this. Tell us what the number is. I remember this. I was in Philadelphia at the time, and I was signing the checks for the Lionel Root Agency. I wrote a check one time for $19 million to buy cattle during that period. And my boss, Fred Turner, called me up and said, Rensi, we got a problem with cattle. I want you to go to Atlantic City, reopen that restaurant, because that restaurant was never opened out of season. We only opened in season. He said, you go down there with all those Philadelphia people, and I want you to design at least 10 Philadelphia submarine sandwiches with cold cuts and stuff that we could put in our restaurants. If we can't sell hamburgers, you got 30 days. I want every sandwich, recipes, specifications, rolls, who we buy in the rolls from. So I took my guys down there, and we spent a month, and we put together a whole package. I had the bakery lined up. I had the meat companies lined up, and we were ready to go. And like Fred Turner said and Ray Kroc said, we don't know what we're going to be selling in the future, but whatever it is, we're going to sell more of it than anybody.
Right.
Actually, Phil Donahue asked Kroc that question in Philadelphia on the Phil Donahue show one time. He said, Mr. Kroc, in the year 2000, what do you think you're going to be selling? Ray puzzled a little bit. He said, I have no idea, but whatever it is, we're going to sell more of it than anybody.
Yeah, you had to roll through that mad cow thing. That probably was quite the period of.
I had some really, not just me, but the whole McDonald's family had a horrible time when that madman from Youngstown, Ohio, killed all those kids in San Ysidro, California. He came in there as a madman and shot up a bunch of people, killed a bunch of people. We bulldozed the restaurant in 24 hours. We paid for all the hospitalizations. We paid for all the funerals. And we actually flew from Chicago in a company plane out there. And we went to all the funerals for all the children. And I'll tell you what, I've never been racked harder in my life than I saw those little white caskets going down the aisle. And they were largely, a bunch of them were immigrant families. They didn't speak English. They don't know what happened. And it was one of the worst days of my life. I got to tell you, it was the most horrible experience I've ever had in my life. But, that's business. You better be ready. You better have standards, because the standards, your values carry you through the crises.
Right.
And if you don't have standards and if you don't have values, man, it's tough to know what to do. And Kroc said it best. This wasn't our problem, but it's our solution. Turner said, we don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to do everything we can to make it right. And Mrs. Kroc actually gave the widow of the guy that shot everybody, she gave her a big chunk of money because she knew that family was in stress. Yeah. And Mrs. Kroc was very concerned about that. You start to think about this. There was something innate about Ray Kroc and the way he did business and how he led people and his soul for the community. I think it was because he didn't really have any he only had one daughter. She died very early at age. And I think he
Mhm.
looked at all of us as his kids, and he
Right.
wanted to do the best.
Yeah, no, it's
But, he gave us all Father's Day gifts. I think I said it already, but he was a superb leader.
No, he's a very interesting man to read about, and the movie was also very interesting. You talked about some of the tough times, right? The shooting incident, the mad cow, and beyond that, right? You just think of the market you're in. Once people saw the McDonald's model taking hold, right, out of the blue comes all these other restaurants, right? New competitors. There's shifting tastes in the market, new technology. How did McDonald's and you and the team there keep that organization moving forward without losing its core, right? These values, right? It sounds like these values are so deeply rooted, you would never lose them. But, you do have competition coming along. You do have challenges. Things come at you. How do you keep it moving forward? Is it through product innovation? Is it through new markets? What is it? What was the secret for you to keep it going?
We never spent 5 minutes thinking about our competition. Never spent 1 minute thinking about roast beef. Arby's started in Youngstown, Ohio, actually just down over the hill in Hickory from Youngstown. And we played around with roast beef for a while and said, can we do it better? We said, hell, we're already in the beef business. We're selling hamburgers, And we looked at the cost and we looked at the cattle markets, and we said, this is going to be a real tough model to keep good quality beef at with those kind of cuts and stuff. And so we played around with a little bit. We put tepidariums in our restaurants, and we put slicers in our restaurants. We had probably 15 restaurants, and there was just no way we could keep the consistent quality and keep the value family focused. We could sell a beef sandwich for $6, and you could buy a hamburger for 15 cents. That didn't make any sense,
Yeah.
Because the labor cost, the equipment cost to do whole roast beef. And by the way, if the roast is no good, I don't care how well you roast it, it doesn't work. So we blended our hamburger by taking the whole cow and putting in high quality white fat to get that 85-15% fat ratio. You can't do that with a roast beef. You take what you get,
Right.
And we looked at Arthur Treacher's. Arthur Treacher's opened up with a fish and chip place, and Louis Grown developed the fish sandwich in Cincinnati because it had a high Catholic population, and he was a bit of a gourmand, and he created our tartar sauce. We use codfish, and it's pretty neutral in flavor. But when you put a slice of beef cheese on it, which we put a little half slice in there, and we put that tartar sauce on there, it elevated the ordinary to extraordinary. So we sold a lot of fish sandwiches. So why can't we take this fish sandwich and stuff it up Arthur Treacher's nose? Why do we need to copy him, let him copy us? And that was a philosophy we had. Everybody was getting in the chicken business. And Fred Turner sent me to Lexington, Kentucky. There was a guy down there that was somehow related to Colonel Sanders. And on New Circle Road, I'll never forget this, Fred said, you go down there and you work with him, because he's got a company called Kettle Fried Chicken. And I want a full-blown report on everything he's doing, how he's doing it. You give him some advice on things he ought to be doing different, and you give me that report. Well, I went down there and worked with the guy. All he did was knock off Colonel Sanders. But he was cooking the chicken in soybean oil, which is not the best fry oil in the world. And I said, well, let's put it in our French fry oil, which was beef shortening. And so we did kettle fried chicken, and we did some chicken, and we had, 15 or 20 restaurants that sold chicken. We had a big market, Norfolk, Virginia. We did that market because there were so many Navy people there from Norfolk that we could get a sense of, will these people from New York City like this chicken? Will people from Nashville, Tennessee like this chicken? Will people from Minnesota? Because those samplers are from all over the United States. So we could get a sample without getting too crazy. Well, we put chicken in there, cost us a fortune. They were all company stores. Now, I don't think we sold chicken for more than 2 years. To get it the hell out of here, because we can't make any money doing this. We can't keep the quality standards up. And why ruin the McDonald's brand by selling something that can't be perfect? So we got rid of chicken. But we were willing to experiment all the time with menu and decor and seating. If you look, McDonald's started out as a restaurant that had no seats and no tables. We had picnic benches outside, which was exactly the first restaurant. Slowly but surely, we migrated. We started adding seating and air conditioning and music and evolution, not revolution.
Got it. So you adapted to the changes. You didn't focus on the competition. You focused on doing what you could do well. You did get into chicken with the nuggets, though.
Yeah, well, that was a whole different ball game. Chicken.
Tell me about that ball game. What was different?
Here's the thing. You don't want to lead the market. If the market's there, take advantage of it. And we just didn't think the market was there for a lot of these products. Now, chicken nuggets are something totally different. Mom and dad were going to McDonald's and getting a hamburger. And as their kids grew, the kids would come. But families with little kids, there was nothing there for them to eat. So we had an operator out in California, I think it was Al Bernardin was his name, and he came up with chicken chunks. They're just 100% thigh meat and breast meat. And the reason the thigh meat is because the thigh meat, if you butchered the chicken properly, is white meat. Most people don't know that, but it's really a white meat. It's not dark meat. And so now, free-range chickens are wholly different. Free-range turkeys are wholly different. But the ones we used were pen chickens. Anyway, he called them chicken chunks. Well, we started playing around with Chef Rene Arend, who Ray hired. He was a French-trained chef. Chef Rene was a magnificent chef. And I was in charge of product development. And we're working on chicken product and chicken chunks at Al Bernardin. And Al Bernardin had been head of product development for Ray Kroc way back in the early days. And Al said, Ed, you got to look at this. And Turner said, Rensi, go see what the hell he's doing. I went and I looked and said, well, there's something going on here. So one day I meet Turner in the elevator going upstairs on the 8th floor of our office building. He said, Rensi, Patty had an idea. Patty Turner was his wife. She said, why don't you call them Chicken McNuggets? He said, so we're going to sell Chicken McNuggets. I said, you get out there and tell Renee we need Chicken McNuggets. So Herb Lotman, Chef Renee, and I can't remember the guy's name now that helped us with the fish sandwich. I don't know. Herb Lotman bought a chicken processing facility in Nashville, Tennessee along the river. We bought the plant. And we started running chicken through there. And they developed the process to take chicken breast and chicken thigh, not the leg, and not any of the trimmings or anything, just that, no skin, and turn it into a Chicken McNugget. It was whole chicken, put a batter breading on it that had a little bit of corn in it for that roasted field kind of thing. And Chef Rene said, the chicken nuggets are okay. He was very French. He said, but it's the sauce. It's the sauce. And he presented me and my team 28 different dipping sauces. And I mean, you, the French, know how to make sauces. I'm telling you, every one was better than the other one. But how are you going to put 28 sauces in your restaurant? So we did a sweet and sour. We did a honey barbecue, and so on. And we boiled it down. I think we tested 12, boiled it down to 5 or 6 or whatever it is now. I think it's 4 or 5. And it was a combination of a change in dietary habits. People were going more toward chicken, but it had to be McDonald's convenient. You could go down. This is another thing. We started off with 4 nuggets in a package, keep the cost. And we were finding out that mom was buying these nuggets for their kids. So she would buy 2 or 3 4s, and she would eat 6, and the kids got the rest. So we said, why the hell don't we do a kid's nugget package, a mom's nugget package, a dad, and a family? So we did 4 different sizes in the test, and we ended up on 6. Mom would eat 3, the kids would eat 3, or she'd buy the 9-piece and she'd eat 4, and the kids ate 5. So it was a shareable at that point. And then it was good for the drive-thru. because you could eat the damn things in your car driving down the highway because you didn't have, the only problem was the sauce at that point. But we tried things like we put barbecue into the batter breading. None of that stuff ever worked. And today I eat Chicken McNuggets all the time. It's one of my favorites. That quarter-pound hamburger, no cheese.
Right. Well, and it just shows the adaptability of the restaurant to changing tastes and things and to lead through that change. And what I keep hearing too is, it sounded like whenever you were making a change, you would run experiments, I'll call them, right? And in a small, cohort of restaurants, maybe 15 restaurants.
We did a lot of market testing. We kind of followed the Procter & Gamble model. Cincinnati was a big test market for Procter & Gamble. And our attitude was, we're not put nothing in 10,000 restaurants until we get it right in 20.
Right.
And we developed, along with the development of the product, we spent a lot of time writing the manuals on how to deal with it, how to prep it, and all that kind of thing. And I used to memorize sections of the operations manual. And I would go in and say to the store manager, teach me how to filter the shortening. I get in there at 6 o'clock in the morning and say, teach me how to filter. Because if they can't teach me, they can't do it. And their job was to educate their staff. And I wanted to know more than they did. We used to make milkshakes and we'd spindle them because Croc started with a spindling machine. We put chocolate on, root beer, whatever we did. But then we developed a machine that was a very complex bastard. I got to tell you, that machine was terrible. It had more computers in it and crap, but we wanted to be precise. I think started out to cost $40,000 or something. We finally got it down, and then I left McDonald. They made it even better. But I was getting my ass handed to me by the franchisee saying, this thing's impossible to work with. It makes great milkshake when it works, but it doesn't always work. So I created a competition at Hamburg University. Every class that came through Hamburg University could have a contest after hours of who could put the milkshake machine together the fastest and do it properly. Because if you train somebody how to do it, it wasn't that hard. So the managers would practice. By them practicing, they were learning. They'd come into Hamburg University to go through advanced operations course, and they'd go into that contest with that torn down machine. It was actually together. They had to tear it down, sanitize it, put it back together, assemble it, and make a milkshake. And whoever could do that the fastest would win shares of McDonald's stock. And every Hamburg University class, and there was 2 a month, could do that. Well, it was getting to the point where these guys are doing this thing so fast that everybody was doing it fast. So I said, okay, we're going to do this one more year, and we're going to see who can do it the fastest blindfolded. Well, this is an absolutely true story because we followed the military aviation process where we built trays, and every part for that milk machine sat in a very specific spot in that tray. And if it wasn't in that spot, you couldn't put that machine together. So when they tore it apart at night, you couldn't lose the part because if that wasn't in that tray, you couldn't turn the machine on. So this kid, I wish I could remember his name and where he was from. For some reason, I think he was from Minneapolis, but I'm not sure. That kid practiced for weeks with that tray in front of him, putting that machine together blindfolded. And he put that machine together blindfolded in record time. I gave him 20 shares of McDonald's stock. I said, this contest is over. Because if that kid can do it blindfolded, and I told the franchisees, I had a film of it. I said, I want you to watch this kid. We had a thing called the Operators Advisory Network. And the Operators Advisory Board, the National Operators Advisory Board, came in for a meeting. I said, I want you to watch this film. This kid just did that thing blindfolded. Don't you bitch about that machine anymore. You're not training your people. Never heard another word after that.
Nice. That put an end to that, didn't it?
Well, it's something that, you're either going to have excellence and standards or you're not. And too many people walk by problems instead of fixing problems. You can't walk by problems anymore. You just can't do it. The competition is too intense.
That's right. Problems ignored become bigger problems, I used to say.
They compound.
And Still do. So let's look back a little on your leadership philosophy, Ed, as we move toward the end of this podcast, because these are great stories, and I'm sure you've got a few more for us. But I want to look at maybe some personal insights and takeaways for the audience here. I know you've talked about leadership is about serving customers and supporting your people, keeping it very simple, which is great. Can you elaborate on that? That's serving customers, taking care of the people. Let's talk about that.
My attitude is that if a leader has to fire an employee, it's the leader's failure, not the employee's failure. Because nobody gets out of bed in the morning and says, I'm going to go into work today and see how many things I can screw up. If you hire the right people that have the right attitudes and the right motivations, and you educate them properly, you teach them the culture, you educate them and train them on what their job responsibilities are, and you follow up with them, and you as a leader, invest in their success, then they're going to become like you. They become a fractal of who you are. Every great employee is a great leader because they create examples for other people to aspire to and to follow. Leadership is an art. It's not a science, but it has very many things that deal with science, whether it's psychology or time and motion or standards or whatever it is. If you're going to lead people, they need to know what their job description is. They need to be physically and mentally fit to do that job. They need to be trained properly. They need to be tested regularly. They need to be motivated to do a better job tomorrow than they did yesterday. And part of the process is to say to every employee, is there any way we could do this better? Do you have any insight on what we could do to streamline this process? Can you contribute to the management of this issue we're trying to deal with by giving us your statement of philosophy or your nuance? Because the people that do it every day, they know what the problem is. I can give you a little story, and this is, I'm not going to tell you the names because it's not fair to me to do that, but there was a great leader in this company who's a great industrialist to this day. And if I said his name, you'd know exactly who it is, but I'm not going to do that. Fundamentally, he was given a company that was owned by General Motors and said, see if you can fix this thing. And I happened to sit with him on a board of another company. And he goes in, takes over the company, and turned that thing around fast. And I said to him one day in this board meeting, I said, how did you turn that company around so fast? He said, it's simple. He said, I put my work boots on, I put my Levi's on, I put a company shirt on. I went down on the factory floor and I talked to everybody running every machine and asked them what they would do to make this place run better. And I compiled a list. I got an executive group together and I said, let's get these people in a room together. Let's pick a person from this part and this part and this part, and let's bring them in here. Let's talk about these issues and let's eliminate barriers, because the problem with this factory is not the workers. It's the management doesn't listen to what their employees are telling them. They're not part of the solution. They're a problem. And he said, and I turned that thing around in 2 months, not because they quit doing what they knew how to do or did something different. It's because their attitude changed, their mindset changed, that somebody in management was listening to them and paying attention to them and willing to do it. Now, I won't get into a whole lot of detail, but it was a motor factory. He started painting the motors white. Why?
Interesting choice.
Why? He said, because I'm putting them into yachts I'm building. And he was telling me about why that was important, because if you're out in the middle of the ocean, you want to see oil spots, you want to see antifreeze problems, or you want to see leaks. You want to know it's a problem before it gets to be a big problem. He said the first time I went to the yacht guy to show him the new motor, he had naked women hanging all over the walls. And he said to the owner of this facility, he said, why do you have all these naked women in here? He said, well, the guys and mechanics. He said, get them off the walls. We got sophisticated people coming in here. They may be bringing their wife, or they may be bringing their mistress. In any case, they don't want to see that shit hanging on the walls. Get it out of here. You either have standards or you don't. Leadership, training, standards, that all comes together in how do you create a great, engaged workforce. And then reward. If I'm going to work for you, boss, you got to work for me. I got to know you got my back. I got to know that if I have a problem at home, you're going to help me. I got to know that if I'm in trouble at work, you're going to help train me or fix me. You're not just going to fire me. And you stop and think about in industry in the United States. Think about all the companies that just lay people off because they're not selling something. It's not their fault. It's not the employee's fault. It's management's fault. What are they doing wrong? Blame the manager, not the employee. Because people do what you lead them to do. Okay, that's too much of that.
It starts with the person in the mirror every day. I always say that, right? You got to give people every chance there is, the support they need. And I always say, if I felt like I've done that and it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But you can't not hold yourself accountable.
Have standards when you hire. Have standards when you train. Have standards when you supervise, have standards when you motivate, publish them so everybody knows what the rules are. That's one of the problems with management. The employees begin to wonder, what are the rules? Because everybody manages differently. You don't know what your wages are coming. You don't know what the bonuses are going to be. Why did that asshole get a bonus over there when he ain't doing half the work I'm doing? It's not fair. And when you get employees to think that the process isn't fair, then they lose confidence in everything in the building. You just can't, they lose confidence on the work floor.
Right on. Right on. Let's imagine you have a new neighbor, they move in and say, hey, I just got promoted to CEO. It's my first time as a CEO. What's one lesson you would give that person, Ed? What's one thing you would tell them to pay attention to?
Keep your mouth shut, open up your ears, and talk to your employees, because they know every problem you got and they know what the solution is if somebody will just listen to them. Because I tell you, I've never been anywhere. If I have to fire somebody, I did something wrong. Every firing was my fault. I either hired the wrong person, didn't train them right, didn't motivate them properly, didn't supervise their supervisor. Every termination was my failure, and I took it personally. But I also had standards, and if you screwed up, you were gone.
Yeah.
That's simple. You got to be, as a manager, you have to be predictable. Your people need to know how you're going to react under certain circumstances. And very early on in my young days, I was a cannonball, man. And sometimes I didn't think through what I was doing, and I was just too. And it took me a while. It took me a long time to figure out, hey, take it easy. You know, and this is something that always drove me nuts. I said, Ed, you don't understand. You're intimidating as hell. You're big. You talk a lot. We can't keep up with you. Cool your jets. I had one guy say that to me. He said, you got to cool your jets. You're making me tired. I never forgot that.
Yeah, I know it takes a while, especially when you have that personality. I mean, look, you transcended from a position at the grill to the CEO of McDonald's USA. I should note,
spread out at 85 cents an hour, and I was making $85 an hour.
There you go. But you know, I should note too that you did finish your degree at Ohio State, albeit a number of years later. So you did finish college.
It was a big mistake. I wanted to complete my degree before my dad passed away. My dad never got out of the 8th grade. My mother graduated from the same high school I did, by the way. And I wanted my dad to know that I got a degree. My brother's got a PhD and my sister's got a bachelor's degree. And I never finished my degree. So I kind of went back to school and worked hard. And I ended up getting a degree in business. I wanted to teach chemistry and biology, but I got a degree in business education because of my background. It was easier to do. But I wanted to have a diploma before my dad and mom died.
Oh, that's great. I'm sure you made your parents very proud.
They sacrificed a hell of a lot for us kids, and you can't ignore that sacrifice.
Right, and that's great recognition that you went back and you didn't have to go finish that degree. Obviously, you were wildly successful, but I think it was important to you and important to your parents.
My brother's got a PhD in power mechanics. He's a master woodworker. He's a contractor. He digs dirt, coal miner. And he said, Ed, you got to get a hold of Jim Buffer, who was my college counselor. And he was my brother's college counselor, too, because Sam wanted to be a school teacher, too. And Jim Buffer, who was, I think he was the dean of education at Ohio State. I'm not sure what his title was. But he spent a year with me, walking me through, and I had to take tests. And I needed 15 hours of English literature and English language. And trust me, I can talk up a storm, and I hate to write. I love to read, but I don't read like most people. I don't pay attention to punctuation marks. I just go like hell. So he had to calm my jets down, and I had to write some papers and stuff. And ultimately, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Going back to college when you're 60 years old ain't easy, or 50. It isn't easy.
Yeah. Well, you did it, though, and that's a great accomplishment. And you've certainly had a fantastic career.
It's better to be lucky than smart.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't know, Ed. I think the harder I work, the luckier I get, though, sometimes.
Yeah, well, I could have gone to work for Burger Chef, too. Who the hell knows?
Right. But, when you look back on your time as a leader, whether it was at McDonald's or with your motorsports team in NASCAR, or anywhere else, what are you most proud of? What do you want to be maybe remembered for as a leader when you look back on all your time?
One thing, I had the common sense to realize that the Ronald McDonald House was special. And I was a regional vice president in Philadelphia, and Ray Kroc always had a bias for charity. It was March of Dimes or whatever it was, because he only had one child, and that child died early. And right. I think he always regretted he didn't have a bigger family. And I was approached by Don Tuckerman, who was the head of the advertising agency at Elkman Advertising in Philadelphia. And I was working with the Philadelphia Eagles through their Fly for Leukemia. And this was because Fred and Fran Hill had a daughter who had leukemia, and they were raising money by passing the hat at the Philadelphia Eagles football game. And I'm a big football nut. I love football. I'm going to Ohio State, you can imagine. See my Ohio State Griffin helmet back there? And I see it. Archie's a beautiful man. He signed that for me, and that's my treasure up there. Anyway, Fred and Fran Hill had this child, Kim, that needed help, and Dr. Evans was her pediatric oncologist. Well, she started out in one hospital, and the doctor there said, you got to go down and see Audrey Evans. And she was at one hospital, but she ended up at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Wonderful lady, a Scottish woman, had sheep back in Scotland, never married. And there was a movie come out just recently called Audrey's Children. You ought to go see that movie because they'll tell you a really good story. But Audrey treated Kim Hill, and they were passing the hat, and it was called Eagles Fly for Leukemia. And Stan Lane was the guy that was managing that. He was a business guy with Leonard Toast of the Eagles. And I got a phone call from Don Tuckerman, who was the head of our Elkman advertising agency. He said, Ed, I think there's an opportunity for McDonald's. Every St. Patrick's Day, you sell a Shamrock milkshake. And actually, all we did was put green cake coloring in it. We never put any flavoring in it. Don't tell anybody, but I actually put spearmint in ours in Philadelphia because selling a green milkshake that tastes vanilla doesn't make any sense to me. So I didn't tell anybody, I just did it. Then it ended up, we started selling mint shakes. And he said, maybe you could give a portion of that milkshake sales, and the Eagles will help you sell milkshake on St. Patty's Day. And we can build this halfway house because John Caduso is going to remodel the house for free because his daughter's got health problems. We just got to buy the house. He said, would you be willing to give, the milkshakes were 18 cents at that time, and I can't remember if he said give a nickel or something like that. No, they were 85 cents. He said, give a dime. I said, no, that sounds too much like March of Dimes. I said, how about if I give you the whole price? Now, I can't do that because these are all franchise stores. I only had 10 company stores. I could do it for company stores, but I couldn't do it for the franchise. So I had to talk them into it. I talked a little bit, coerced more, talked a little bit, got Tuckerman involved, got the Eagles involved, and finally they said, okay, how many shakes are we going to sell? Well, we're going to sell 100 milkshakes. The food cost is this, the labor cost is that, so we're really only giving them 40 cents, but we're going to say it's 85 cents, a charitable donation, and just all that mass donations. Well, we had this Shamrock milkshake promotion, and it went through the freaking roof. Everybody was coming in because Philadelphia Eagles were a big deal in Philadelphia Metro. We had a lot of stores here. They were coming in buying these milkshakes like crazy, and all of a sudden I'm giving 25 cents for every milkshake to this charity to help fund the house. Well, then we were off to the races. We were all over the television. We were getting free publicity, and franchisees loved it because they were getting all this notoriety and milkshake sales. This trial. People were trying our restaurants. And Philadelphia always had a history. People didn't like fast food. Gino Marchetti of Gino's, he had restaurants there. It was really a pain in my ass, frankly, to get the sales up in that area. It was a Midwestern company, and nobody on the East Coast give a shit. They just didn't care.
Right. They're going to eat their steak sandwiches. Right.
Yeah, so Kim Hill lived, I think, into her 30s. She actually had a child. And Audrey said, I may save your daughter, but I may kill her brain. And so that was the genesis of Fred. And Fred was a football player, and Fran was an educator, a teacher. And they moved back to Southern California, San Diego, and they became franchisees. I made sure they could become franchisees out there. And Fran ran the restaurant. She was a really good franchisee. And it just snowballed, and away we go. And so the Ronald McDonald House, we built the second one in Chicago. And I invited Kroc to the one in Philadelphia. The one in Philadelphia was nice. But the one in Chicago was a house that Ray was familiar with, in a very nice neighborhood, but it had been derelict. And they went in there and restored all the woodwork. And Ray was a quality kind of focused guy. And he went into that house and he fell in love with the architecture. He fell in love with the mission. So from that point forward, he gave $25,000 of his own money to every Ronald McDonald house that opened. And I don't know if Mrs. Kroc is doing it today because I've been out of McDonald's for a long time now. But that was the genesis of the Ronald McDonald House. And I was in a restaurant in Sarasota, Florida. I used to live up in Sarasota. Now I live in Venice. And I walked into this restaurant, which is a butcher shop restaurant. And this kid's walking through, and he's the owner's son. I didn't know it at the time. He's got a shirt on that says, "Remember Logan." And I don't know why, but I just knew that was a Ronald McDonald House thing. And I don't know why to this day, because he never said anything about Ronald McDonald House. And I said, "Tell me about Logan." And he started talking about leukemia. And this child was born with it, evidently. And he said, and we went to Philadelphia, to Children's Hospital, and there was a doctor there that specialized in this form of leukemia. I said, "Was it Dr. Audrey Evans?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "How do you know that?" I said, "It's a long story, but tell me about your baby." Well, the baby died while they were there because they just didn't get it early enough and the baby was not strong enough. But he started raising money then for Logan, for children's charities. And, you stop and think about that. The fractal, drop a pebble in the water, it creates ripples. Drop a quarter in a donation box, and maybe it'll be 75 cents, $1, hundreds of. Look at Jerry Lewis' telephone, just a dime, just a dime. And so, our country's got a big heart. Our country's got a big heart. Our people are really, really, really good people. Their parents, they're community focused. And every society's got some bad people. But that Ronald McDonald House is very, very special to me. It caused me doing a lot of other charity work, too, because a lot of people out there, and I was blessed. I got lucky. So why not share that?
That's a great feeling. And for the listeners who aren't familiar with the Ronald McDonald House, these are homes that are built for families who are bringing a sick child, generally to a hospital somewhere, and it gives them a place to stay at no charge, I believe, right?
So,
And
well,
I saw them build the one near the Hershey Medical Center in Hershey,
yeah.
Pennsylvania. And that was a beautiful home, right?
The thing is,
that they built.
It's never 100% free. I'll tell you the reason why. If
Okay.
you contribute, you feel better about yourself, and they got enough
Sure.
stress with that. So it's do what you can. Cook a meal,
Okay.
wash some dishes, cut the grass, because there are people that stay in those Ronald houses for weeks on end.
Yeah.
And by pitching in and helping out and counseling other parents, it's a community. The community is always better than the individual.
Right on.
So
right on.
There's so much about it. So I've always my brain is always about, I give all my charity money to Ronald McDonald House. I don't need to go anywhere else because it's pretty comprehensive.
Well, and it's interesting, as we close out here, I think about all the things you accomplished, and that's the one thing you're most proud of. I mean, that just speaks to your heart, Ed, and it speaks, I think, to the ethos and the values of the McDonald's organization, and giving back the way that you all did, and the way you personally have done here it's very admirable. That's what you want to be remembered for.
House, if it hadn't been for Ray Kroc being worried about me, how can I turn my back on that in the future?
Yeah, yeah.
That would be
something.
You can't do that.
Lessons stay with us for a very long time.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's important, Greg, because every one of us adults needs to be careful about how we raise children, how we support children, because you never know who's watching you thinking about, should I be like that? They don't do it consciously, but role models count. That's one thing that drives me nuts about athletes today. Whether they like it or not, they may be great baseball players, great basketball players, but they have a responsibility for the adulation they get to be good role models. The thugs among them diminish all of us. And it drives me nuts sometimes, some of these players, like this whole nonsense with all this gambling and the NBA and getting tangled up with the mob and all that stuff. I got to tell you, that is a cancer on our society. Role models are really, really important. And you got to be a good role model. And we're really divided in this country today. It's a sad state of affairs the way we're divided for over nonsense. It's just, It's stupid.
Right. Well, I think you're role modeling very well with your charitable contributions, and with the way you're paying it forward to a lot of people on this podcast, to tell your stories and to help them be better leaders, to maybe think differently about success and really what you do once you've been successful, what kind of legacy you leave behind. So it's been a great conversation.
I try to do as many leadership speeches as I can do. And
that's great.
I put a lot of stuff, I did, on YouTube. I don't do it anymore. But, I got involved in NASCAR, which is a wonderful organization. I'll tell you, Bill France Sr. and Jr. and Jim France and Lisa Kennedy, they have done a fabulous job with that sport. They've kept that sport clean. They've done some really fabulous things with that. And I was in that world for about 15 years. I'm trying to get back into it again because I love teamwork. And when I look at what the France family's done and how they've contributed to entertain people and those kinds of things, they give back to society every day. And there's a lot of people like that in our country. You can look at businesses, look at the Bill Gates Foundation, the kind of things he's done. And you could find people like that all over the United States. Why aren't we celebrating those people today? Why aren't they the heroes we're talking about? Why aren't they getting the publicity? These are quiet people that go about their life every day. I think there ought to be a TV series called Hidden Heroes.
Yeah.
Really good TV talking head interviewer, I don't know what kind of person it would be, goes out into the community. There's a guy that does Real Jobs, I think it's called, or something like that, where he goes and talks to mechanics to clean out septic tanks and stuff like that.
Dirty Jobs. Yeah, Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy ought to do something about the charities in the United States and the sacrifices people have made to develop charities to help other people. Because if there was ever a gift that society gets, it's people helping people. Okay. That, in my opinion, is the pinnacle of an advanced society, when we never leave anybody behind.
That's fantastic. And Ed, I think that's a great place to end today. You've been a great guest. Love the stories you've told, love the experiences you shared, and the wisdom that you passed on to our listeners. I personally appreciate the opportunity to get to talk to someone like you. I'm so glad our mutual friend Howard made the introduction, and I'm very grateful to you for coming on the podcast and sharing everything you've shared with the audience. So I want to say thank you, and I wish you well. And someday, if I'm down in Venice, I would love to meet you in person and shake your hand, sir.
Good. We'll go to McDonald's and get a quarter pounder with no cheese and a chocolate milkshake, and I'm ready to go.
I just want cheese on mine.
Hey, it's ready for
Great.
everybody.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it.
Goodbye.
Have a good one.